I've always looked for the perfect life to step into. I've taken all the paths to get where I wanted, and no matter where I go, I still come home. Back to this life that I want to escape. And I don't know exactly when I started looking for this other life. It wasn't during my childhood, no deep dark secrets there. My parents, Phil and Nancy, were 29 and 19 when I came into this world. I was born Lane Rutherford Staley, but I always fucking hated my middle name and changed it to Thomas right when I turned 18. And I grew up Bellevue Brat in Washington. My old man was a car salesman, and my mom mostly stayed at home. She was a devout Christian and still is. And I went to Christian Science Sunday school for the first 20 years of my life. It gave me a good grasp on my spirituality. My mom's maiden name is Lane, and that's where my name came from. My first memory was looking up at a musical carousel hanging over my crib. When I was 3, my mom gave birth to my sister Liz. We've always had a special bond. My mom said I used to get so focused on drawing something or playing with Legos or Tinker Toys that she'd put a sandwich in front of my nose and I wouldn't even notice it. That focus and need to create stayed with me my entire life. When I was 7, my parents got divorced. I remember sometimes wondering where my dad was, but most of the time I was too busy running around and playing. Eventually I learned that my dad was a drug addict. And just 2 months after the divorce, my mom, she remarried to Jim Elmer, and I got a stepbro named Ken. Ken and I became really close and would hang out all the time. My sister Liz decided to get adopted by Jim, but not me. I kept holding out hope my dad would return. My dad only came back into my life once I was famous. Jim and my mom had a kid together. My sister Jamie, when I was 10, I would tease her by calling her Chewbacca because of her hairdo. I've always poked fun at everyone. In the late 70s and early 80s, my stepbro Ken and I started really getting into music. Mostly hair metal and rock stuff. Our faves were Twisted Sister, Ozzy, and Scorpions. I was also into Billy Joel's Glass Houses and Fleetwood Mac's Rumors. When I was 11, Jim took me to a Van Halen concert. It was sick. We were down in the mosh pit. It's crazy to think I ended up on tour with them. In 4th grade, I decided that making music was how I was going to make a living. I read an article about Steven Tyler, and he was in a limo doing lines of Blow on a Mirror, and he had babes under each arm. And that's when I decided I wanted to be a rock star. I wanted to do Blow, and I wanted those babes under my arms. I didn't know what Blow was, and I didn't know what sex was, but it looked impressive to me because it was written in the magazine. I didn't know what instrument I was going to play. And I started playing the trumpet, and then cornet, and then at 12 I took up the drums. I'd listen to my favorite rock bands on headphones and try to imitate them. But when I was 15, I realized I was getting much better than when I started, so I decided I wanted to sing. At the time, I was in a cover band with friends from high school. At first, I just wanted to sing one song, but the singer said, "No, you're a drummer. Drummers don't sing." So we got in a fight, and I packed up my drums and got in my van and drove straight downtown. Traded my drum set for a delay, a microphone, and mic cord, and went home and started practicing. I was horrible at first, but I found my instrument. When I told Ken, he said, "You suck. You can't freaking sing." A lot of people doubted me in my youth, but I never let it stop me. If anything, it fueled me. Ken and I would transcribe lyrics to songs by Twisted Sister, the Scorpions, and Van Halen, and then sing over the songs. I pretty much always fucking hated school, and by junior year I basically gave up. I wasn't very popular and I wasn't big into sports. I'd get picked on because I was small. I was just done with the whole scene. The only things I liked were woodworking and skateboarding. I spent most of my time in high school focused on my goal, training for what I wanted to do with my life. And one day in 1984, Ken ran into his friend James Bergstrom from marching band. James's band Sleaze was looking for a singer, and my bro said, "Hey, my stepbrother Lane plays drums, but he wants to be a singer. You should give him a call." After the initial pitch, Ken said under his breath, "I think he kinda sucks, so it's not my fault if he can't do it." Eventually, an audition was set up that would change my life. I showed up to the audition with peroxide blonde hair, dressed like a member of a hair metal band, with the names Ozzy and Motley Crue written on my pants in bleach, and a pentagram on my jacket. And at the time, that was the thing. And the band said, "Fuck yeah, this is what a lead singer should look like." And then I got the job on the spot. And the first song we performed was a cover of Motley Crue's Looks That Kill. We started rehearsing several times a week. By early 1985, we were tight enough to start performing live. Our first show was during lunchtime at Shorewood High School. We showed up decked out in makeup, hairspray, and Motley Crue outfits. I barely looked at the crowd while performing and mostly paced back and forth on stage, just looking down while singing, or else I had my back to the audience while looking at the drummer. But man, after the show we were high on life, a high that I tried to recapture. From then on, we played a few more shows at other high schools. And started making several $100 per show. For the first time ever, I began getting attention from girls. All of a sudden, we had hundreds of girls at the shows, and it was like whatever we wanted, whoever we wanted. And I took on this cocky, irreverent rock guy persona, telling people to screw off being an anarchist, that kind of thing. I started dabbling in drugs and booze. Nothing serious, just mostly weed, but we did drink a lot. My new lifestyle started to cause tensions at home. My mom's very strong-willed and has her own definite opinions about morality. I ended up being given an ultimatum because of my drinking and drug use. So at age 18, I had no place to call home. I started couch surfing and staying in friends' closets. And around that time, I got introduced to the Music Bank. The Music Bank was one of the sickest places to ever exist. It had over 50 rehearsal rooms. And it was open 24 hours a day, and it was fucking cheap. My room costed like $150. And when I first showed up to the bank, my hair was long and spiky with blue streaks. And I was rocking pink jeans. I came in looking for a job, but they weren't hiring. And I was able to convince them to rent me a broom closet, just barely big enough to fit a small drum set, but all the sleeves squeezed in there. Man, summers in that room were brutal. On our first day in the closet, we left the door open, and this dude from the band accused stuck his hand in the doorway, giving us the bird. And I couldn't let that go unanswered, so I found a piece of dog shit and placed it in front of their door. And one of those losers stepped on it, tracking shit all over the bank. It was all shits and giggles at the Music Bank. One time I put a dead rat inside a drum set that belonged to this band called Sex. And for payback, they got me fucking good. I had just gotten all dressed up for a big date, and they had booby-trapped my door with a cup of flour. After I got covered in flour, they doused me with water. Dude, I was pissed. Shit, but those were the fucking days. In early 1986, we decided to make a demo for Sleaze. We approached Tim Branham to help us make the demo. He was an up-and-coming producer in the area. Tim worked with me for months on my vocals. Tim had enough money to afford lessons with Maestro David Kyle, but I was dead broke, so I would come a few times a week to Tim's house, and we would go over the cassette tapes of his vocal warm-ups. He also made copies of his vocal lesson tapes with Maestro for me so I could practice at home. After about 6 months of daily practice, the notes started to just flow out effortlessly. Later on, I did get to study under Maestro Kyle. But singing wasn't something that I learned. Not like you learn your ABCs. There was this chaos inside me, man, just eating me alive. Singing. That was me, bleeding and healing all at once. Maestro Kyle, he got that. He saw right through the bullshit, right to the fucking heart of it. Helped me shape it. The fire that was always there. Showed me how to tame it. Turn myself into an instrument. Maestro taught all those pretty voices, those opera singers, Ann Wilson, even Chris Cornell. I'll never forget. One day Maestro put Jeff Tate's picture right in front of me, and he pointed at it and said, "Lane, someday that's going to be you." At that moment, I became certain that I was going to be a star. And just nobody else knew it yet except me and Maestro. We recorded the Sleaze demo at London Bridge Studio. I spent a lot of time in that studio over the years. We were a pretty tight band by this point, having spent months working on the songs and performing them live. I was never cut out for a normal job, not one bit. Don't get me wrong, I've worked as a dishwasher and other odd jobs, but I just never lasted long. In the summer of 1986, I worked in this factory that made radiation containment devices and equipment to help pay for the demo. It was like a sweatshop type of deal. They had all kinds of people coming straight from jail to work there, and people who just didn't speak any English. My bandmate Nick Polak worked there with me. We would spend our time on lunch breaks going out and pounding down a 12-pack of beer. I took acid on the job every day for about 6 weeks. Let's just say I'm glad I don't work there anymore. In winter of 1986, we finally ditched the name Sleaze and began going by Alice N Chains. When I wake and I'm making time for sleeping, yeah. The name originally came from a side project of Sleaze. We were going to have this band that dressed up in drag and played heavy metal as a joke. For one of our Sleaze shows, I had designed backstage passes that said, "The Sleaze Welcome to Wonderland Tour." At a party, the band and I got into a conversation about Alice in Wonderland, and it evolved into Alice in Bondage. From what I remember, I got to basically give credit for the name Alice in Chains to Russ Klatt. I remember him saying the name first. Dude, my mom did not like the name at all. Neither did any of the other members' parents. So we compromised and took the name Alice N Chains. Back then I was very against heroin, but I was doing just about everything else. The scene at the Music Bank was lots of cocaine, booze, LSD, and stuff like that. And everybody was smoking weed and that sort of thing. The most hardcore thing I do at this time was free base coke. I've always had a strong constitution for drugs and booze and never held back. My drug use got to the point where the members of my band organized an intervention. They said, "Dude, we love you, man. And we don't want to see you get involved with that and ruin your life, affecting your great talent." Fuck, that shit really hit home. I was in tears and promised I wouldn't do drugs anymore. And that was the first of many interventions in my life. And I came to despise interventions. I even made it a household rule later on that they weren't allowed. The truth is, they never work. If you're getting clean for somebody else, it ain't going to last. I've gone to rehab 13 times, mostly for other people, and I usually got high the day I was released. You have to be doing that shit for yourself. The band stayed together for a while longer, but our breakup was imminent. On May 1st, 1987, we played one of our final shows at the Tacoma Little Theater. It wasn't a particularly great show or anything, but in the audience watching was a 21-year-old Jerry Cantrell.
Like the coldest winter chill, heaven beside you, yeah. Like the coldest winter chill, heaven beside you, yeah.
Jerry later told me that from the moment he saw me perform, he knew he had to be in a band with me. Jerry had been going through a lot personally. His grandmother had died recently, and his mom had died just 3 weeks before the show. Dude, Jerry has always been a visionary, especially in terms of calling what was going to be the next big thing. For instance, he called it that the band Poison would blow up way before they did. He did the same with Guns N' Roses. He even called it that rockin' streetwear like jeans and t-shirts would become the next big thing. In the summer of '87, I met Jerry again at a party just out of the blue. I didn't think he was the coolest guy in the world or anything. He had no family in the area, so he was kind of struggling. He didn't have any money or a place to stay or anything. And me, being completely drunk, just offered a total stranger a place to stay and clothes and food and musical instruments. I think 2 days later, he moved his stuff up into my rehearsal room at the Music Bank. Jerry's band Diamond Lie had fallen apart, and my band finally met its demise. I started working with Ron Holt and James Bergstrom on some music. It was pretty ahead of its time, kind of a semi-industrial heavy rock combination, similar to Ministry, one of my favorite bands. By late '87, Jerry decided to form a new band. I had remembered meeting Sean at Alka Beach a few years earlier, and still had the piece of paper with his girlfriend's phone number. Jerry called up the number and spoke with Melinda Starr and set up a meeting with Sean. Sean and Melinda came by the Music Bank and listened to Jerry's demos. At some point, Jerry mentioned that they would need a bass player to jam with and had someone in mind. And he said, I jammed with this guy Mike Starr a year or so ago, and he seemed like kind of a cool dude. Sean said, that's weird because this is his sister. And I've been in bands with Mike on and off since we were 11 or 12 or something. Sean called Mike, and within a day or two he came to the Music Bank, borrowed some gear, and jammed with Sean and Jerry for the first time. I began jamming with them too. During our third rehearsal, we were playing a cover of Tommy James and the Shondells' Hanky Panky when a promoter walked by and asked if we could play a gig. We didn't have any songs or anything, so we lied and said we could. And we ended up getting the gig. Jerry, Mike, and Sean wanted me to join their band full-time, but I didn't want to stop working on my industrial music with Holt and Bergstrom. And one of the songs I did with Holt and Bergstrom, called Tribute, led to the creation of Man in the Box. Jerry and I worked out a short-term solution. I would sing with Jerry's band, and in exchange Jerry would play guitar in mine. My band was called 40 Years of Hate, and Jerry's band was called Fuck. Sean came up with the name Fuck, and it wasn't the most marketable name, but we weren't getting work anyway, and so we thought it wouldn't hurt us. In early '88, Holt went to Los Angeles and didn't return for like 9 months. Around the same time, Jerry, Mike, and Sean really started putting pressure on me to commit to their band full time. They tried using reverse psychology on me by saying they were getting a new singer, and began auditioning replacements in my rehearsal room. They brought in the shittiest guys they could find. One of them was a redhead male stripper. Seriously, like the worst singers you've ever heard. I said, oh God, what the fuck are you guys doing? And Jerry would just say, it wasn't too bad. And I kind of liked that guy. And they did this with 3 guys before I finally had enough. And I came in and said, okay, fuck that. I'm joining. Let's just do this thing and I'll quit the other band. And that was the beginning of Alice in Chains. Back then I was so unsatisfied with my life and wanted nothing more than to be a famous rock star. But if I had known that being a successful band was going to be such a tough job, I would have stayed dealing weed and probably lived a happier life.
Hey, hey, my. Rock and roll can never die. There's more to the picture than meets the eye. Hey, hey, my. Out of the blue and into the black. You pay for this and they give you that. And once you're gone,